Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of Parched and Peckish.
Welcome to episode 4.
Nate, how do you make a Maltese cross?
I don't know, Sam. How do you make a Maltese cross?
You stamp on their foot.
Yeah, boom.
Yeah.
He's here all week, unfortunately.
Well, another way of making the Maltese cross is to steal all their delicious food and beer.
Yes.
Which is what we've done today.
Which you've got laid out like quite a feast here in front of us. Yes, a few different interesting looking things.
Yeah.
Where does this inspiration come from, Malta? What is the connection for you?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have on Claire, my wife's side of the family, a huge Maltese contingent.
Right.
Some of which live in the UK, some of which live still in Malta, and so we get to go across to the small island every now and again.
Right.
And I was lucky enough that Claire's parents have just got back from Malta for Christmas.
Right.
And brought with them a range of Maltese food and drink.
Yes, there is quite an assortment of snacks and drinks here, all looking very good. I don't know a lot about Malta, really, and I didn't even know it was a place until some years ago. I was very familiar with the Maltese Falcon, which I watched when I was young. Humphrey Bogart, Mary Astor, classic, John Huston, film noir. But I didn't know it was a place until much later than that. And then in London, I had some Maltese neighbors who yelled a lot. And apparently, they weren't fighting. That's how they talk.
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah. They always sounded like they were going to kill each other. But it was just them having a conversation about what they were going to make for dinner or, who's going to take out the trash. It was all
exactly. And
heightened.
What's interesting about that is that feels very Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And the Maltese the Malta and the Maltese are a strange cross between a very Mediterranean country with the Mediterranean heat, the sea, the food, yet with strangely British sensibilities, apart from the shouting.
And is this because there were bases, I think, British bases in Malta for a very long time?
There's a very strong link. That link has been very strong for a long time. And Malta actually won the George Cross. The whole country won the George Cross during the Second World War.
Right, wow.
And because to bear witness to their heroism and devotion during the great siege that they underwent by the Italians and Germans in the Second World War. So they were at the point of starvation. They'd run out of all supplies. The Italians and the Germans were basically bombarding them by air and blowing up any supplies that were trying to get across from the British Navy. But anyway, are you thirsty?
Yes, I am thirsty. You're probably more thirsty after all that talking.
Yes, so, I did. Go
can I pour you some of this rather interesting looking Kinney, if I pronounce it correctly?
You have. So this is the Maltese answer to Coca-Cola.
Right.
And it will have. We'll see. I'm not going to precondition you.
I was cheating because I read the label on it. Bitter, sweet, soft drink with orange flavoring and aromatic herbs, which harkens back to our Amaro episode, I believe, which was episode 2.
2, yes.
Yes. And this smells of Amaro to me. So let's into this tumbler we've got.
Yeah.
So is this a national... You can get this everywhere there?
This is, by the side of the road in vending machines. It's used as a mixer quite often with vodka, and in this house, gin.
Ah.
And
I could see how that would go very nicely with gin.
Yeah.
Ooh, what's nice is it's not too sweet.
Yeah.
There isn't a syrupy kind of sugariness to it. It's quite light. It's almost more of that orange aroma.
Yeah.
And then it evaporates very quickly.
The bitterness, I think, is really nice.
Mm.
And in hot weather, this is much more refreshing than Coca-Cola.
That is very tasty.
It's unusual, isn't it? I think it's, for a soft drink, it's...
But it really reminds me of Amaro, which we're both fans of. So,
yeah.
But I imagine you can't get that here, can you?
You can.
Oh, you can?
You can now.
Right.
So we buy ours through an online retailer.
Right.
A famous online retailer who I don't like to promote too much.
Yes.
But no, I'll put the link to on the website.
Yeah, but you said a great mixer, and it is something quite fresh. You could see in the sun either drinking that, like you said, on its own, and or as a mixer with vodka or with gin.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice.
Yeah, it's great. When I open my Maltese cocktail bar.
Right, yeah.
We'll
Excellent.
definitely
Excellent.
have
And
that
then
on
we'll
the menu.
probably, and you'll have some of these snacks, I imagine, on your Maltese cocktail bar.
Yeah, so to go with the kind of lighter side of things, or the party food, we've got cheesy Twisties.
Yes. We've got something very similar in Canada. I think they're called Cheez-Its.
Yeah.
But they look exactly like that. And they're this crunchy kind of corn snack
Yeah.
that is just slathered in faux cheese.
Faux cheese powder. Yep.
It's exactly what they taste like.
So nothing unusual here, but in Malta, they consider these their own cheesy snack.
Can I interest you in another Twistie?
I'd love a Twistie. They're very similar, actually, to a British snack called a Knick Knack.
Yes, they are. Knick Knacks aren't don't tend to be as cheesy though. There are other flavors, but it is that kind of shape.
Yeah, and crunch. But yeah, I really like them. And so, next to the cheese Twisties or cheesy Twisties, we have another Maltese. It's effectively a yeasty biscuit, a bread biscuit, or a water biscuit, but it's made with yeast, and you wouldn't normally eat them dry.
Well, you'd eat them sort of dipped in a drink, or would you have like something on them, like a bit of this cheese that we see over here?
You'd either have a bit of cheese on them, or there's some Maltese dips made with broad beans,
Right.
called Bigilla or Bigilla, and another Maltese pate based on anchovies and tuna, which is also made with mushed up Galletti, which is what these are called, and that's very nice.
They're actually quite tasty on their own, and I think in some ways, I don't know if it's just the yeast. Well, there's semolina in there, which maybe you get some of that sort of slightly grainy crunch to it. And maybe some of that corn sweetness, but it feels like there's a flavoring in there. It doesn't taste like a plain water biscuit that I would expect here to taste like.
Yeah.
There is more flavor. There is more sort of a character to it.
Yeah, and those come also flavoured with black pepper and chili flakes and things like that. I really like Kinney.
Kinney is a very tasty soft drink, yes.
So that's a winner.
That is a winner.
So yeah, it was developed in the 1950s to try and rival cola, as Coca-Colas were taking over Europe after the Second World War. And it's now brewed or made by the same company who own one of the major, or the only major brewery on the island.
Which is what we're coming on to.
Which is what we're coming on to now, which is Farsons. So Farsons were set up in 1928, and the beers were really brewed to suit the British palate because of the Army and Navy based in Malta. So we've got a range here, but I thought we would try one of their most famous beers, which is called Hop Leaf, which is a pale ale.
Which seems like a very appropriate name for a beer that has been hopped.
You'd hope. Yeah.
So this does it tend to come in a 500ml bottle?
Actually, that's quite a rarity. They usually come in the 330s.
Right.
So it's Malta's probably second most famous beer after their most famous beer, which is a Pilsner.
Right.
Called Chisk.
Chisk.
It's spelled Cisk.
Right.
And
well, you'd expect a Pilsner to be in a hot country like that. It suddenly reminded me of something I drank in Canada many years ago, or something like hams or something. I don't know. I've had some strange flashback to drinking beer, or the taste of beer in Canada when I was young. So there's something in that.
It's
in the aroma and in the flavor. That tastes like Molson Canadian or Labatt's Blue or something like that. That is the most... That, for a beer, that reminds me more of Canadian beer as I remember sort of the commercial sort of lagers when I was younger. I've never tasted anything that reminded me as much as this does, actually. It's made me quite nostalgic, actually.
That's good. That's good.
Not extraordinary beers, but well constructed, and there is a character to it that reminds me really of Canadian beer. Interesting.
So we've got some cheese over there.
You do have cheese. You've got two kinds of cheese.
We've got two kinds of cheese. And Maltese cheese, again, the Maltese are very proud of their cheese, so much so that it's been given protected status when they joined the EU. It's called Jabernet.
Is that the brand?
No, that is the word for Maltese cheese.
Right.
And that is spelt in a very strange way.
You can see it on the website.
You can, but I just want to
Okay.
I just want to say how the Maltese really love their consonants.
Uh-huh.
So Jabernet spelled Gbejenniet. Yeah. Maltese Scrabble, I would imagine, has a very different scoring system because the numbers of Q's, X's, and J's in words make a very interesting read.
Yes.
What you've got there, Nate, is a plain sheep's cheese.
Yeah.
And a black pepper covered cow's milk cheese.
Black pepper, coming back to the black pepper again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are very, very traditional. The sheep's cheese is more traditional. And these cheeses are made in a similar way to ricotta.
Right.
And then they're dried outside or in a drying area that has a good breeze and a warm temperature. So
sort of a little Parmesan style sort of aging, because they age Parmesan in great big barns.
It's nowhere near as long.
Right.
So I think these are aged for something like a week. And you'll find it quite hard and quite crumbly.
It's very punchy.
And quite salty. Sorry?
I really like that.
Yeah.
It's quite intense.
And then it mellows into a slight creaminess, which is I think it's delicious.
That is lovely. It's very unique.
Yeah.
I was trying to compare it to any other cheese that I've had, and there were similarities, but there's a tanginess to it, which is like a kind of like a dried feta kind of tang, but then the texture is different.
Yeah.
There's quite a long finish on it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity there. It is a really, really, that's excellent cheese.
Yeah. And you can see why the Maltese are so proud of it.
Yeah. I would be proud of it if it was my cheese.
Yeah. And these things come, and they're about the size of, I don't know, kind of
like a biscuit.
Yeah, like a biscuit.
Yeah.
Round. So you can have them fresh.
Yeah.
So and when they're fresh, they're also delicious because they're made with sheep's milk, and they're put into pies and things like that. But these dried ones are.
This peppery one smells almost pickled.
Well, good catch. Because quite often the peppered ones are then either brined or pickled.
Ooh. Zing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you taste the vinegar?
Can I taste the cheese?
Wow, yeah.
Wow. It's interesting. That's almost like a dare food. There's something that you would dare someone to eat. Or eat, like just eat a whole one and see how they got on. Because that's very intense. The pickled character is really long lasting in your mouth. The black pepper isn't so hot, but gosh, that is an interesting cheese.
Which do you prefer?
I certainly prefer the traditional one. Though I don't know, I just like interesting stuff, and I can't say that I've had anything quite like either of them. Pickled eggs and other, pickled vegetables and things, but I'm trying to think whether I've really had a pickled cheese or a brined something that was that sort of pronounced, something that sort of intense. I'm just wondering, it's worth trying it.
We'll go on a Galletti.
A Galletti. Well, I've been wanting to test drive one of these Galletti and with the cheese since I noticed it earlier on. So I'm going to pop one of these in. Actually makes it harder to eat. And so the whole thing is kind of... Yeah, I might need some more of that.
Some more hop leaf.
That hop leaf. There's some other interesting looking beers here, but that hop leaf was open. Huh?
Well, it's got the right kind of
Cleansing
properties.
cleansing attributes to it.
I really love both of these. The cow's milk one with the pepper, which has the vinegar flavour, is a little bit more crumbly. So it's a bit more drying in the mouth as well as being quite sour. But the sheep's milk one is a step above, isn't it? It's wonderful.
I think that's a really super cheese. And it is, like you say, the complexity, but the texture and the finish on it is really, it's just very unique and really flavorful. This is very nice.
I'll run you through the rest of the range of Farson's beers we've got here,
right.
And we'll pick one to taste, or maybe two. We've got Blue Label, which is an amber ale, and then we have the wonderfully named Lacto, which is the milk,
could only be
the milk stout of the range. Interesting fact about Lacto is that when it draws towards Christmas, the Lacto in the shops becomes very hard to come by.
Right.
There is a run on Lacto because it is a traditional ingredient in Maltese Christmas pudding.
Oh, wow. Right.
Which makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I'm cracking open the Lacto, which I really
Which
can't
just
say
doesn't.
without-
There is a schoolboy kind of humor to the name of this beer.
If you don't know, then lactose is the sugar which is often added to stouts to turn them into milk stouts. So it's
Which is present in milk.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's an unfermentable sugar, so it tends to give the stouts a slightly sweeter flavour as opposed to a dry stout, which like Guinness, which
Yes, I never quite. I didn't understand that until doing some reading, seeing because people like Colonel they specify that it's a dry stout, and I wasn't aware until I did some reading that it is sort of a historical reference to it being a dry stout because you had these milk stouts which were sweet stouts, so you would label a dry stout or a milk stout so that people knew, whereas I think people might not have, I wouldn't have associated stout with a sweet stout growing up, sort of with Guinness and Murphy's and other things like that, which were dry stouts, and so wasn't aware that there was this milk stout, which had also been quite a popular style and is sort of finding its way back into popularity now.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of the unusual styles which we're now more familiar with, which were very traditional, have come about. It seems they've come about because modern brewers have been looking for something new, so they've looked to the past to kind of bring very traditional styles up to date.
Yeah.
I think this one has always been brewed in the same way. It's got quite a strange, almost lactic acid pong to it.
I'm getting like really strong rum raisin aromas. And treacle, black treacle, or molasses. Really lovely foamy head. It's quite light. Coffee. Some sort of espresso foam, milky, like a milky coffee, but in a sweet, like it's sort of confected, concentrated.
Yeah, with very little bitterness of any kind from either the roasted malts or any hops that come through afterwards.
No, it's quite sweet. I could see why it would work good in a Christmas pudding.
Yeah.
Because you maybe wouldn't want too much of the bitterness.
Well, I think we maybe have to transplant these beers and try in our mind's eye to think we're sitting on a beachfront in 40-degree weather surrounded by the sea. And then suddenly these lighter flavours, which, you could argue in a way that this Lacto milk stout is almost refreshing, which is not something you could say about many milk stouts I've tasted in the past.
It's very clean, and you could drink it in hotter weather, and I think that's the big thing to consider.
Right.
Well, so we've got some molten pies that have just flown in here.
These aren't just any ordinary pies. Again, a unique Maltese delicacy. Delicacy. People eat these by the dozen on the street corner. But these are pasticci. And pasticci are made, as you can see, with a kind of a layered phyllo-type pastry.
Yeah.
Well, typically they have two different fillings. One is a ricotta-type filling, which would be a soft, fresh gebernet.
Yeah.
And the other is with a slightly spiced pea filling.
Right. Right. And this is like a garden pea.
I think it's like a dried pea or a lentil.
A lentil
that's been
kind of thing.
Cooked down. And, yeah.
So not a lot of meat in Malta. Is there not a lot of meat in the diet?
There is some meat. I mean, traditionally, a rabbit is a big source of meat.
It's
on
big
the
game.
island.
It's big game on Malta. Yeah.
But fish is huge.
Obviously, yes, of course.
There's not a lot of room on Malta for large kind of
grazing animals
farming
and stuff like that.
So a lot of the meat, I think, is imported from Italy.
Right.
And they're actually very, very close to Sicily. You can, I think, if on a clear day, you can see Sicily from the cliffs of Malta.
Right.
And a lot of the cuisine is kind of influenced from Italy as well. So there's a lot of pasta, pizza. But one of their most iconic dishes on the island, and if you ever go, you have to try it, is octopus stew.
Ah.
And they really know how to cook an octopus. It's wonderful.
Another island that does wonderful octopus is Madeira.
All right, okay.
Which went to for our honeymoon. And I had the most incredible octopus stew there. It burnt my mouth quite badly, but it was the most tender. It was octopus and rice, and they do it in this. It's very traditional there, but it's one of those. Maybe it's an island thing.
I think so.
Yeah. So we've got these pasticcis.
Pasticci, yeah.
Pasticcis, yes. And so they're. I don't know if they're still a bit too hot.
Okay.
Right. Well, I'm wondering, should we open this chisk to have with these pasticcis, because it's the traditional, it's the most popular beer in Malta. I think it's only fair.
It's a reasonable temperature, so.
Well, it's very cold out here tonight, so.
It is. So hopefully these pasticci will warm our cockles.
Well, and them looking like clams is. Quite on point. I think that you make that rather apt joke. So, like you were saying before, these kinds of beers certainly have a place, and you can get them. They're brewed in just about every holiday destination. So this is a smaller bottle, 250 ml, which I guess because it is so hot, you drink it. You don't want a bigger bottle like this hot leaf, which might be more of a sharing sort of thing, but you'll drink it sort of quickly while it's still cold.
Yes, and typically, unless you're British and they spot you, you're given a smaller beer.
Right.
If you're British, then they ask you if you want like a large beer. So.
Right. So I think so. The P one is this one here, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it does. Yeah, it does look like a. It almost looks like refried beans in there, actually, It has that dark sort of consistency. Did you want to play it?
Yeah. And very, very flaky pastry.
Yeah, so it is this sort of, it is layers of phyllo, essentially.
Very crisp and crunchy. You definitely need a beer to go with it, because there's a risk of it becoming a little...
claggy.
But... I think
very tasty.
I love that pea filling. And all over Malta, they have small bakeries whose main thing they make is pasticci, called pasticceria. And you buy them by the 6 or the 10 or the
like donuts.
and then stand there and scoff them. But the dough is made very similarly to phyllo. And the huge burly men stretch the pastry out over their arms till it's so thin that you can see through it.
Right.
And then layer it up, and then fill it with either the ricotta or the peas, and then into a boiling hot oven.
They're very tasty, and I can see what you mean about the pea. It's quite dense and rich, and almost has the feel or the essence of a pasty, like a meat-based pasty, because of the sort of the depth of flavor that they're getting and the spicing that they're getting in the peas. There,
It almost tastes like there is some meat in there.
Yeah, like you'd be forgiven for thinking that it was meat, because there is that kind of, with the spicing, which I'm trying to put my finger on, which feels like something I've had before.
Well, Malta's been through a fair number of invasions over the years. So it's a very Catholic country, but before that it was invaded by the Moors. So it was a Moorish country. And actually, the Moors landed there and ripped up all the vines and all the olive groves and planted lots of citrus. And that's why wine has only really started to become more popular, or rather, it was always been popular, but grown more in the past century or so.
I have a bottle of Maltese wine that a friend brought back when he went on holiday there, called Marnisi, and it says it's old vines, but modern, so they're not traditional vines, so it's Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc, so classic Bordeaux blend. I think it's 8.5 hectares that they have on the property. But as you were saying before, it's almost impossible to get Maltese wine, but that's very interesting. I thought they'd have more of it, but it makes sense they didn't, because it's such a small place, and if they had all the vines ripped up a couple hundred years ago, then it might have taken a while for the tradition, or that tradition, to come back again.
Yeah. It definitely influenced the spices and the flavours and things like that of the country as well. And but the wines are really good. I mean, you can imagine the climate they have. I mean, they're slap bang in the Mediterranean. It's very close to Sicily. I think they probably have to be quite careful about temperature and sun and things like that. But
certainly ripeness is not a problem.
Not a problem at all.
Because you're on an island, you get all the oceanic breezes coming in.
Yeah.
Certainly acting as an antiseptic against any disease, but also hopefully cooling them off as well.
Yeah. So you enjoyed the pastizzi then?
I thought that was delicious. I really enjoyed that. There were sort of echoes of pasty, but that I loved the flakiness of the pastry, so it didn't feel stodgy.
No.
It was all quite buttery, but light and crispy and flaky, and so it never felt weighed down with it. It was very easy to eat, so it didn't feel like a stodgy pasty, and I just love the flavoring of the peas. I think the spicing on that and the richness, the way they've cooked that up, a thick pea stew,
almost like a dal or something like
it
that.
It is, yeah. That's very, very much what it's like. Actually. Yeah, very good.
Delicious. Pastizzi, double Z.
I like the name.
Yeah.
Pastizzi.
So that rounds up our Maltese feast.
What?
I'm afraid.
I'm starving.
We do have another six pastizzi to eat.
Well, this has been brilliant. Having had these neighbors, it's nice. And I didn't know that Claire was half Maltese, so I've learned something new. So, but it's a place that I have had an interest in, and so to know a little bit more about the history, try some of the food, certainly from a very selfish point of view, it's been very, very stimulating and interesting for me.
Oh, good.
As well as this is more than I'm used to eating, so it's very good as well.
It's a fascinating country with a really interesting food history. Yeah, I encourage anyone to go. It's also really warm in kind of autumn, winter, so it's great for a late break. Thanks for listening to us scoff ourselves silly on Maltese food and drink.
Hopefully not too much slurping, snorfing, slobbering. But hope you enjoyed another interesting epistle from the Parched and Peckish people.
And tune in next time for who knows what.
Who knows? Sam he's such a crazy guy. You never know. You never know.
Goodbye.